Hi guys, today I'm going to be showing you how to make this cute 3D bear, teddy bear, or whatever you want to call them or make them into. You'll need 100 single bands total, and you can also just make a head charm. You'll need 42 bands for that, 2 blacks, 2 beige for the nose, and 1 pink band if you want it pink. And for the rest of his body, you'll need a total of 58 bands, some beige on the belly if you want. So let's get started. First, we'll make the ears, the eyes, and the limbs. Taking a single band, my eyes will be black. I'm looping it 4 times on my hook. Taking another single band, the black, looping it 4 times, and your eyes can be whatever color you want. Taking a single band, the same color as your body, I'm going to make him teal like this bear, and pulling all the loops onto your single band. Repeat for the other eye. Now for the ears, we're taking a single band, looping it 4 times on a hook. Repeat for the other band, taking another single, looping it 4 times on a hook, taking a single band, and pulling all the loops onto our single band. And we are going to put it aside for later. Be careful it doesn't come off. Repeat for the other ear. Once again, taking a single band, looping it 4 times, another single, loop it 4 times, and pulling everything onto a single band. There's our second ear. Now let's make the arms and the legs. It's exactly the same way. We're taking a single band and looping it 4 times on the hook, like that. Taking 2 single bands and pulling all those loops onto the 2 single bands and getting it onto a hook. Make sure it's even, spread it out. Taking 2 more single bands and pulling all the loops onto the 2 single bands and getting the other side onto a hook, making sure it's even. Taking our last single band and pulling all the loops onto our single band. And I already made 4, so go ahead and pause the video to make 3 more and come back when you're done. Now let's make the head. We're taking 2 single bands, looping it from 1 peg, crossing the center, and covering the peg across from it. 2 more single bands, crossing the center, and if you're working on the loom, you can loop it on the center peg, but I'll pretend this is the monster tail. I'll loop it on the 3rd side peg. The last 2 bands, same thing. We're covering total of 6 pegs, crossing the center and looping it to the other side. Push everything down. Row number 2, we're taking a single band, 6 of them, covering the 6 pegs, and then looping the bottom 2 bands up and over to the center. And you should have 2 loops left per peg. So that was row number 2. Push it down. I switched the background so you can see better, hopefully. Now, if you want a different nose than my bear here, then you can most definitely do that. And you want to add it on these 2 loops here, right at this point. Now, for row number 3, I'm taking 6 single bands, covering my 6 pegs, and looping the bottom 2 bands up and over. And in this video, I'm going to be doing this nose with you. And we'll add that much later. So continue around your loom, covering your 6 pegs and looping the bottom 2 bands up and over, leaving 2 loops left per peg. Push it down. Row number 4, we are going to add the eyes. Taking your eyes and attaching it from the first center to the side first peg for both sides, and covering the rest of our loom with a single band and looping the bottom single up and over to the center, leaving 2 loops left per peg. Push it down, row number 5, same thing, taking 6 single bands, covering the 6 pegs, and looping the bottom 2 bands up and over, leaving 2 loops left per peg. Make sure you pull the bottom 2 bands up and over to the center. So that was our last row for our face, and now let's add the ears. We're going to get the loops onto a hook for our ears. There's one side, and I'm going to attach it on the first side peg for both sides. So taking the loops off onto our hook and pulling our ears onto those 2 loops, and then reattaching it. Repeat for the other ear, same thing, getting the loops for our ears onto a hook, grabbing the 2 loops off of the other first side peg, and pulling the loops onto the 2 bands we took off of the side first peg, and then reattaching it. Push it down. So now let's take it off the loom. I'm going to go clockwise, starting from here. You can start anywhere, taking the 2 loops onto our hook, going clockwise around our loom. Careful, and getting them onto our hook. So that's what he should look like, and now let's stuff him. I'm taking some old bands and just pushing it inside his head, making sure it's not overstuffed and that it's nice and round. Taking a single band and pulling all those loops onto the single band and tying a slip knot. And make sure your ears are sticking out and not inside your head. Cinch off his head. Squish our head so it's nice and round. Tuck in our charm string, or you can leave it dangling if you want. For your head charm, that's up to you. So there's my bear head so far, and now I'm going to add this mouth for my bear. I'm going to put my hook through these 4 loops on his face, the row right underneath the eyes, like that, getting the 4 loops onto my hook, taking 2 beige or whatever color you want your nose to be, double it, twist and double, and we're going to pull all those loops through his face and onto our hook. Like that, and then make sure it's even. We want our bear's nose to be even, so that's what it should look like at this point. Now take a single pink band, and we're going to pull all the nose onto our pink band, getting it onto our hook, and tie a slip knot. So this creates the small nose that I want for my bear. So there's our bear's face so far. Tie it so it's centered, and then we can tuck in the slip knot band, or you can tuck it in to give it that bear look with the mouth like that. you have to play with the bands to make it look right. But at this point, I'm going to very carefully put my hook through the inside of my nose from the bottom to tuck in the slip knot band, so that way it's hidden in his face. And you can choose to do whatever you want to that slip knot band. So there's the bear head charm, and if you just want the head charm, you're done. But if you wanted to attach it to the body, we're going to go ahead and grab the 4 loops right underneath his neck right there, getting the 4 loops so it's crossed in the center like that onto a hook. Now we're going to grab 4 single bands for our body and pull all those loops off of our hook and onto the 4 single bands. So that's what it should look like. And now on our loom, we're going to attach the side where our finger is onto the center first peg. Make sure our bear is facing up. And the other side, we're going to pull it on the left second peg. And now we're going to pull the top 2 loops off of the center first peg and moving it to the right first peg, and moving the 2 loops off of the second left peg and moving it to the center third peg. And if you're working on the monster tail, you can put it on the left third peg. And if your band looks a little different from mine, that's okay, it'll still turn out the same. And we'll just move our bear's head between the left first and second peg to center him. And now with 2 single bands, we're going to cover the rest of the 6 pegs by looping it from one twist in the center to the other side. So now our 6 pegs are covered. That was row number 1. Row number 2, we're taking a single beige. This is the belly, looping it from the first to the second peg on the left, adding our arms on the left first to the center first peg, and adding our other arm on the left second to third peg on the loom, like that. Now covering the rest of our loom with a single band to cover all 6 pegs. Go around and loop the bottom 2 bands up and over, leaving 2 loops left per peg. Push everything down. So now let's expand. Since our belly is here, we're going to pull these 2 loops off the side second right peg and moving it to the third right peg. Now we're going to pull a loop off of the side first right peg that's attached to the first and moving it to the third. So I'm taking the top loop off and I see it's attached to the third. I'm holding it, taking the other loop off. It's attached to the first, moving it to the third and reattaching the first loop. So now the first and second right peg each has a loop. Just going to pull this loop off of the center third peg, it's just in the way. Now we're going to pull these 2 loops off of the side left third peg, and if you're working on a loom and these 2 loops on the center third, go ahead and pull that off and move it to the center fourth peg, and the monster tail, just move it to the bottommost center peg. Now we're going to pull a loop off of this center peg that's attached to the right third peg and moving it to the left third peg. So I'm going to pull the top loop off, check to make sure it's attached to the third left peg, and it is, and I'm going to move it to the third left peg. So that's what it should look like. The third left and the centermost each has a loop. And I'm going to take 3 single beige covering our belly. So I'm looping it from the first to the second left side, and the second to the third, and my last beige from the center first to the side first peg. And for the rest, I'm using my bear color, covering our 8 pegs on the loom. And loop the bottom bands up and over. The third left peg has a loop because we expand it. Loop it over, making sure we have 2 loops left per peg. That was row number 3, push it down. Row number 4, we're taking a single beige under the belly on the first left to the second left. And for the rest of our 8 pegs, looping our bear color bands, covering the 8 pegs and looping the bottom bands up and over, leaving 2 loops left per peg. Push it down. Row number 5, we're going to add our back legs. So taking our legs and adding it to the same pegs as our front legs, looping it from the center first to the left first peg. And our other leg, we're going to put it from the left first to second peg on the loom, and covering the rest of our 8 pegs with a single band, and looping the bottom 2 bands up and over, leaving 2 loops left per peg. And if you want to make this one beige also for the belly, you can. Push everything down. So now let's take it off the loom. We're going to start with these 2 loops off of the side right second peg, and I'm going to go counterclockwise this time. It's more comfortable, and if you're working on the monster tail, go ahead and stuff your belly and make sure your legs are outside, going around your loom very carefully, getting the 2 loops off of each peg and onto our hook. There's our bear so far, and let's stuff him. I'm going to stuff him with some old bands, and don't overstuff him. So there he is so far, and now let's tie off his bottom, taking a single band and pulling all those loops onto our slip knot band and cinch him off. So there's our bear so far. Make sure you fix his arms and legs to make sure it's straight, and squish his head so it's nice and round and not all long and flat. And now let's add the tail. I'm just going to take a single band, twist, double, and just going to make a tiny tail. I'm going to the back of his body and the center of his back. I'm going to pull 2 loops and just check to make sure it's the center of his back, getting the 2 loops off of his bottom onto a hook, grabbing the single we doubled off our finger and getting it onto our hook, like that. Now taking our slip knot band, I'm going to get the loop onto my hook, using my finger to help, and pulling the loop through the single we doubled to tie our tail off, and then going to the other side, fishing it through, and just tying off our slip knot, and we're tying off our tail. It's just a little nub on the end, and you can make his tail bigger if you want, and just tuck in that slip knot band. So there's your 3D bear. I hope you like him. Thanks for watching.